My nemesis and I both think we're dating experts. He sneered, I dare you to fake date me for a year. We'll let our friends decide who's better at it. I accepted the challenge. Same old rules. The loser has to call the winner daddy. He showered me with designer bags and jewelry like a model boyfriend. I gave him my undivided attention and brought him medicine late at night like a doting wife. Until the year was up. He wasn't ready for it to end. Listen, this isn't enough. How about we go into overtime? I slammed my hand on the table, ecstatic. LMAO. You fell in love. You lose. Call me daddy. But he was a sore loser. Not only did he refuse, but he actually got so mad he cried. My nemesis, Paul, and I were giving a mutual friend relationship advice. Once again, we disagreed. After all, we both considered ourselves the ultimate dating guru. Our friend, used to our antics, pulled us apart as we were turning red from arguing. Guys, you both have valid points. Who am I supposed to listen to? Paul and I said in unison. Me, obviously. Paul and I have been at each other's throats since we were kids. Neither of us ever backs down. Our eyes met in a silent, mutual understanding. A new storm was brewing. Paul raised an eyebrow. Arguing like this won't get us anywhere. How about this, Tina? I dare you to be my fake girlfriend for a year. His words silenced the entire room. But Paul just stood there, looking completely serious. As if anyone who thought otherwise had a dirty mind. Chris and Sarah are here today, so they can be our relationship referees. A year from now, they'll decide which one of us was better at the dating game. I know you're desperate to one-up me. But you need to chill. A year? That's way too long. Are you insane? Paul shook his head and explained with a straight face. A week? A month? What can you tell from that? Only a long-term game will expose our true natures when we can't keep up the act anymore. That's how you'll see who's a real pro at relationships. So, Tina, cut the crap. Are you in? Paul smirked, slumping back onto the sofa and shooting me a sideways glance. His handsome face was full of undisguised provocation. A single drop of cold sweat trickled down my forehead. Damn. This was a high-stakes game. But I only hesitated for 3 seconds. After all, Paul's smug, gloating expression was getting on my last nerve. He was so sure I wouldn't dare. Well, I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction. Losing the battle before it started wasn't an option, so I raised my voice. I'm in. You want to play? I'm not scared of you. And it's the same old rules, loser calls the winner daddy. In. Public. Paul gave a confident, dignified nod. Done. He stood up and walked over to me. His broad shoulders and narrow waist cast a shadow over me, smelling faintly of cedarwood. He slowly extended a well-defined hand. Then let the games begin, girlfriend. A handshake to declare war? That's it? And here I thought his grin meant he had some killer move up his sleeve. I laughed. Then I threw myself straight into his broad chest. I mustered all my strength to let out a ridiculously sultry, drawn-out reply. Of course, ho nay. I call this move the element of surprise. Just as I expected, Paul's body went completely rigid. His heartbeat went haywire. That's all you got? Pathetic. You should practice more. I basked in my victory, nestled in his arms. But then I caught a glimpse of our friends behind me, all staring with expressions of pure admiration. Why? Was I imagining things, or was that look of awe directed at Paul? What did he do that was so admirable? Anyone with eyes could see it. Round 1 was a total knockout for me, okay? That night, Paul drove me home in his flashy Bentley. In the car, I pinned him to the top of my contacts. I changed his name to Paul my honey. Paul wasn't about to be outdone. He immediately showed me his phone's wallpaper. His contact name for me was Princess Tina. And the chat background was a candid photo of me from my birthday party, head bowed, making a wish while wearing a crown. Damn it. How was he so fast? I remarked, Paul, I didn't know you had any normal pictures of me on your phone. They say the camera captures emotion. As my greatest nemesis in this life, Paul had a countless collection of my most embarrassing and ugliest photos on his phone. And he swore he would never delete them. He had a talent for taking my face, which the media called a 360-degree, flawless, God-given masterpiece, and making it look bizarre in every shot. It wasn't hard to see. Paul really, really hated me. In response to my question, Paul calmly retorted. What's normal? And what's not normal? I was taken aback. His hands were on the steering wheel, focused on the road, but his tone was serious. To me, every photo captures a unique and unrepeatable moment of you, Tina. If I deleted one, I'd lose that 1 second of you forever. What a waste, right? Whether you look good or not, you're still you. What's the difference? As for why I chose this picture, I just guessed you'd like it. Wow, I said. In just a few moments, he could spin such a smooth, fake romantic line. Paul. You're kind of a master at this. I sank into a gloom, feeling I was at a disadvantage. But then, my luck turned. I quickly realized it was an invalid point. After all, Chris, one of our judges, had asked for a ride, saying it was on the way. Paul had refused, saying he needed some quality time with his girlfriend. Such a perfect scoring opportunity, and no one was there to see it. All those sweet nothings, wasted. Paul, you really shot yourself in the foot on that one. The news that Paul and I had gone from mortal enemies to an inseparable, lovey-dovey couple spread like wildfire through our social circle. At first, no one believed it. But they soon realized something was off. Limited edition handbags, pink diamonds from auctions, impossible to get haute couture gowns, and luxury flower deliveries once a week. He sent them all to my family's house with flashy fanfare, as if they were free. He even lost interest in his few hobbies, like playing Texas Hold'em. When asked, he'd say, "You guys play. I have to go shopping with Tina. Yeah, my girlfriend's super clingy. What can I do? Totally. I feel like I haven't completed my daily mission if I don't spend money on her. I know, right? You single guys just don't get this kind of struggle." He had the whole model boyfriend act down perfectly. And with that, all the other heiresses in our circle finally cried their hearts out in the bathroom. When I heard how hard Paul was playing his part, I started to feel the pressure. So I began a little psychological warfare of my own. Paul, have fun with this competition. Looks like your dating life is officially on hold for the next year. My personal chauffeur, Paul, who diligently picked me up and dropped me off wherever I went, just smiled nonchalantly. If my dating life is on hold because of you, he said casually, I couldn't ask for more. Sigh. He was so deep in character. Paul's competitive spirit was beyond saving. I just snorted and leaned back in my seat to conserve energy. I wasn't a fool like him. After all, I knew the real battlefield was the gala we were heading to tonight. The judges would be there. But I never, ever expected to run into Paul's uncle, Julian, at the gala. He was the center of a crowd. Every gesture he made exuded a calm confidence, honed by years of experience. Oh, my God. This man was aging like fine wine. How was I ever supposed to get over him? I gritted my teeth and glared. Paul, your uncle is back. How could you not tell me something so important? Paul rubbed his nose innocently. Would you believe me if I said I just found out, too? Try treating me like an idiot one more time. I was about to lose it and deck him. But just then, guided by Paul's parents, his uncle's gaze landed on me. Oh no. They were talking about me. I slowly uncurled my fist and forced an elegant smile. His uncle heard whatever they said. Like any elder wishing a young couple well, He gave us a warm smile and raised his glass in a toast from across the room. My vision went black. Everything was ruined. Yes. Back when every girl was fawning over Paul, I was the only one with the unique taste to have a secret crush on his uncle. Julian was the epitome of a sophisticated, mature, and successful man. That might not paint a clear picture. But what if I told you he looked like a prime George Clooney? How would you handle that? You reap what you sow. Just half an hour ago, I was mocking Paul for his ruined love life. I never thought the karma would come back to bite me so painfully. Not ready to give up, I nudged Paul with my elbow. Hey, buddy, do you think your uncle would still be open to me pursuing him after I'm done with you in a year? Paul forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You can try. Try and die. My uncle was a man of principle. He would never. On the verge of tears, I gazed at my uncle, bidding a final farewell to my long, secret crush. But that jerk Paul, far from feeling sorry for me, twisted the knife with a nonchalant comment. Tina, control your eyes. If the media catches you drooling over my uncle, you can forget the competition. You'll lose on the spot. Lose? I looped my arm through Paul's. I puckered my lips and put on my sweetest voice. Honey, let's not dawdle. We should go say hello to your family. With my first love now dead and buried, I felt unstoppable. I felt terrifyingly powerful right now. Paul's parents and mine were probably the biggest victims of this bet. Rumors about Paul and me were flying everywhere. By the time they reached the ears of our 4 clueless parents, they were already acting like we were engaged. The moment the news of our relationship broke, Paul's mom even took the bracelet off her wrist and put it on mine. A stunning, translucent emerald green. Having a small fortune on my wrist at such a young age was terrifying. I asked Paul with a racing heart, this is just a bet, but we're deceiving our parents. Isn't that a little messed up? Unfortunately, this kid wasn't as considerate as I was. He glanced at the bracelet on my wrist and laughed it off. It's not a big deal. Just wear it for fun for now. I knew it deep down. I had already lost to his uncle. I couldn't lose the competition, too. With that conviction, I walked up to our parents with my arm linked through Paul's. I acted sweet and dependent on him, playing the part of a doting fiancé perfectly. The adults looked at me, nodding their heads so much they almost fell off. Later, they went off to chat with old friends. I finally got a chance to talk to his uncle alone. Julian's sharp eyes noticed the bracelet on my wrist. His tone was a bit wistful. The last time I saw you, you were just a little girl. I can't believe you're about to get married. Right for the heart. Looking at that handsome face, I decided to make one last desperate attempt to save myself. Marriage isn't on the table just yet. Uncle, if I told you that Paul and I were in a competition to fake being a couple, would you believe me? My uncle took a moment to process this, then a look of understanding crossed his face, and he broke into a warm smile. Tina, you're wearing our family's heirloom for the future daughter-in-law. Do you really believe Paul is just in a competition with you? My head is so itchy. I think I'm developing a romance-addled brain. My eyes widened as I stared at the bracelet in my hand. The family had something like this? If what his uncle said was true, then Paul was trying to frame me for fraud. I touched the hot potato on my wrist hesitantly. Is that so? I should go and confirm. Tina, what are you two talking about? I had barely exchanged 2 sentences with his uncle. Like a bloodhound, Paul had sniffed me out and returned. He slid an arm around my waist with a natural, familiar ease. Can you let me in on it? This completely unnecessary display of possession sent a jolt through me. I bared my teeth in a fake smile at his uncle. Then I slowly turned my head to make eye contact with the drama queen. Damn it, Paul. Rein in your crazy desire to perform. His uncle isn't a judge. What are you trying to prove in front of him? But Paul just looked down at me coolly, with a look that screamed, I don't get it and I'm not listening. Just catching up with Tina, his uncle said, taking in our silent exchange with a deepening smile. It seems a lot of interesting things have happened while I was out of the country. Thankfully, his uncle didn't plan on telling Paul what we were talking about. Even though Paul was nearly a decade younger than his so-called uncle, when they stood face to face, their auras were evenly matched. Paul smiled calmly. Of course. After all, uncle, you were busy making big bucks in the States. You can't be in two places at once, can you? That's why I came back, isn't it? Paul's expression changed. You think you're in time? Julian was unperturbed. How will we know if we don't try? Right, Tina? Why are you dragging me into this? But before I could react, two intense gazes, one from Paul and one from Julian, landed on me at the same time. What? Is my breathing bothering you too now? Panicked, I launched into a prepared speech. Uncle, I'm not an expert on this, but I'd still like to share my thoughts. After carefully listening to your question and thinking about it for a long time, I've come to the conclusion that I don't actually know how to answer. As I said at the beginning, I'm not an expert on this. After a moment of silence, they let me off the hook. Phew. Crisis averted. That was a close one. My mom often laments that I'm too slow and didn't inherit a single drop of her or my dad's shrewdness. But even a dullard like me could smell the gunpowder in the air after that subtle exchange. I get it. I respect it. They're uncle and nephew. In ancient times, these two would have been rivals for the throne. With the family's insane wealth on the line, was it so surprising that they'd be at each other's throats? As an outsider, and to avoid getting caught in another power struggle, I made myself as small as possible, hiding behind Paul and silently listening to their cryptic conversation. All I could do was marvel to myself. The lives of the rich are so messy. What were you and Julian talking about earlier? Paul asked suddenly on the way back. I cleared my throat, feeling a little guilty. I couldn't very well tell him I was hinting to his uncle about our competition to create a backup plan for myself. If he found out, he'd accuse me of cheating and force me to concede. With that in mind, I put on a calm front. What was there to talk about? You all ran off to schmooze. I haven't seen my uncle in years. Can't I just have a few words with him? My diversion tactic worked. Paul sneered, so he's your uncle now? Why wouldn't he be my uncle? He is my uncle, he is. Fine. Paul didn't feel like arguing. He let out a soft laugh and changed the subject. If you marry me, then Julian really would be your uncle. I was speechless. He can even flirt with that? Could he really be a dating genius? For the first time in my life, I felt a sense of defeat, the feeling that I was truly no match for Paul. Thankfully, the traffic light turned red just then. The red light streamed into the car, blending with my suddenly flushed face and hiding my blush. His teasing voice floated over. Why so quiet? Are you that shy? Starting to think marrying me wouldn't be so bad, huh? I was rendered speechless. I stared at Paul's smug face and gritted my teeth. The light's green. Shut up and drive. My face turned green with rage. Summer arrived in a flash. Paul's birthday was just around the corner. He was a flamboyant, high-profile social butterfly. Every year, his birthday party was a massive affair, as if he wanted to invite the entire world. Sarah came over to my house to gather intel. Tina, Paul's birthday is tomorrow. Can I be nosy and ask what you got him? Paul's family was powerful. Every year on his birthday, people would find creative ways to send him expensive gifts to curry favor with the family. As the girl everyone now saw as Paul's cherished and spoiled girlfriend, my gift was naturally under intense scrutiny. Unfortunately, I was sitting at my computer, binge-watching a show. Haven't gotten anything yet, I said casually. What? Sarah's eyes went wide as she rushed to my side. For God's sake. His birthday is tomorrow. People have been lining up for ages to give him presents, and you, his actual girlfriend, haven't prepared anything? First of all, I'm not his actual girlfriend. Secondly, who in their right mind would waste money on a guy? Especially a guy who has way more money than you? I waved my hand dismissively. I'm broke. My money is for important things. Sarah tried to reason with me. But honey, all of his friends will be at the party. If you don't give him a gift, won't people think you're a bad girlfriend? It takes your best friend to know exactly what to say. Mention the competition, and you've got my full attention. I shot up as if just waking from a dream. I grabbed an empty box and started rummaging around my room. The little lion keychain I tried to embroider after watching a TikTok video went in. My unworn Van Cleef Arpels black onyx bracelet went in. The oversized t-shirt that was way too big for me went in. The men's cologne I blind bought and hated went in. I still felt it wasn't enough. Finally, I ran to the kitchen, found some flour and butter that were about to expire, and personally baked a batch of cookies. Even though I didn't want to spend money on Paul, so what? I still managed to put together a full box of stuff in minutes. This is the effortless chill of a true rival. Sarah, who had watched the entire gift selection process with a frown, could only whisper to herself in an attempt to rationalize it. Whatever. If it's from Tina, Paul will probably love it no matter what. He's so whipped, after all. Over the years, our friends had often tried to set me and Paul up, clearly just to mess with us. I completely ignored Sarah's comment, basking in the joy of saving money and pulling a fast one. Exactly. What kind of amazing gift hasn't the young master of the family received? This box has both sentiment and showmanship. He'll definitely think it's a very special gift. Plus, cleaning all this stuff out made my room look much neater. Turns out, Paul really didn't have great taste. He ignored a room full of priceless treasures. Instead, he was clutching the box of my second-hand cast-offs, grinning like an idiot. Tina, this is the best birthday present I've ever received. His eyes lit up as he rummaged through the contents of the box, finally landing on the lopsided little lion car charm I had embroidered. I don't know what he was thinking, but his brow furrowed, and he squeezed the charm tightly. You told me your hand hurt last month. Was it from sewing this little lion for me? I noticed his concerned gaze drop to my hand. Feeling guilty, I quickly hid my hands behind my back. Last month, Paul had been pestering me every day to play teamfight tactics with him. I thought the game was boring. So I made up a story about a sudden, excruciating pain in my fingers that made it impossible to play. I never thought he'd not only believe me but also connect the dots himself. Why are you romance-addled people so dramatic all the time? But despite my thoughts, Sarah and the others were here. Might as well play along and score some points. So, when I spoke, I let him believe it and added a brave smile. You dummy. As long as you like it, that's all that matters. I lowered my head, avoiding Paul's teary, emotional eyes, trying to ease my conscience a little. Sorry, Paul. I'm just a really competitive girl, I wasn't trying to trick you. Much. The days passed slowly. On the surface, Paul and I continued to play the part of a lovey-dovey couple. Behind the scenes, we were still competing fiercely. But less frequently. After Julian returned to the country, Paul became visibly busier. Our old mahjong group could no longer get a full table of 4. Chris scratched his head in frustration. I think Paul's in deep trouble this time. His uncle came back with a vengeance, and he's out for blood. I don't know if Paul can handle him. Although Julian was an illegitimate son who had grown up abroad, his skills and experience were undeniable. Besides, after years of battling on Wall Street, he had brought back a massive amount of capital. No one could say for sure what the old man, the head of the family, was thinking. A cold autumn wind blew in through the window. I stared at the empty seat at the square mahjong table. I froze. Memories of Paul's strange behavior from a while back flooded my mind with the wind. It was a very ordinary night. His call came in, but when I answered, it was his friend's anxious voice on the other end. Hey, Tina, sorry to call so late. Paul's in a bad mood today and had a bit too much to drink. He keeps calling your name. Do you have time to come pick him up? We can send a driver for you. My heart sank. Paul might seem like a carefree playboy, but this was the first time he'd ever drunk himself into such a state. What had happened so suddenly? Just the day before, when I went to his office to see him, he was still in high spirits, cheerful and happy. Paul's assistant said he had slept less than 6 hours total in the past few days and hadn't even had time to eat. But when he looked up from his mountain of work and saw me, he still walked over with a smile and playfully tousled my hair. Paul had lost a lot of weight. Dark circles of exhaustion framed his eyes. I stared at him, stunned. Why are you looking at me like that? Feeling sorry for me? I'm going for that battle-worn CEO look. I'm so captivating, even I'm falling for myself. You're pretty crazy about me too, aren't you, kid? Ugh. A perfectly good Paul, ruined by the fact that he could talk. I rolled my eyes at him. I suppressed the urge to touch his face. I placed the container of food my aunt had packed on the table. I heard you're not eating or sleeping. I was afraid you might die, so I came to check on you. This is nothing. If I can't handle this, how am I supposed to be Tina's boyfriend? Seeing that Paul still had the mind to think about our competition, half of my anxiety melted away. I watched him finish his meal and left, feeling relieved. That was just 1 day ago. How did this idiot suddenly get himself drunk? With that thought, I slipped on my shoes and rushed downstairs, forgetting to even grab a coat. Paul was wasted. Under the vibrant, chaotic lights of the bar, he was a stark contrast, leaning back in his seat with his head tilted up. He looked strangely broken. Tina, you're finally here. Paul just sat here drinking by himself all day. Once he got drunk, he wouldn't let anyone touch him. He scared the hell out of us. Paul must have been under a lot of pressure. A wave of indescribable sympathy washed over me. I bent down and sat beside him. Why did you suddenly drink so much? Come on, I'll take you home. Paul didn't resist my touch. But when he heard my voice, he didn't seem happy. Instead, his face darkened. Who the hell told her to come? The people around us didn't dare to breathe. Tina, you came here in just shorts and a t-shirt. Aren't you cold? Paul reeked of alcohol and could barely speak clearly. But he still stumbled to his feet, took off his jacket, and draped it over me. The scent that hit me was the cologne I had given him. It's the subconscious acts of caring that stir the heart the most. I couldn't help but soften my voice. What's wrong? You don't want to see me? I don't, Paul said bluntly. His eyes, glistening under the lights, looked up at me. He looked like a big, sad golden retriever. Tina, I don't like you seeing me in such a pathetic state. And damn it, it's because of Julian. It's not that I can't take a loss, but being beaten down so helplessly by the guy you like, it really gets to me. Tina, do you think I'm useless? But the truth is, if I want to be better than Julian, I have to work twice as hard. Because he's a little better than me. To hear such words from the ever-arrogant Paul? My feelings were complicated. I was speechless for a solid moment. Julian has age and experience on his side. Paul, you're already amazing. All right, get up. The driver is waiting for us outside. Really? But Paul still didn't seem ready to leave. He looked up, grabbed my hand, and asked with the stubbornness of a child seeking validation. Tina, if Julian and I really go head-to-head, who will you support? The question was as nonsensical as you'd expect from a drunk person. In the complex power struggles of his family, who I supported didn't matter at all. But since he was drunk, I had to play along. So I answered without hesitation. You, of course, Paul. Paul, in my eyes, you're the best. If you and Julian ever face off, I'll be on your side, no questions asked. The childlike Paul was successfully placated. His lips curled up into a smug pout. Good. Don't worry, Tina. With those words, I'll definitely beat Julian. I'll show you that you didn't pick the wrong person. After making his grand pronouncement, Paul finally agreed to go home with me. After that day, Paul was true to his word. He became even busier, completely swamped with work. I hadn't seen him since. My thoughts returned to the present. Sarah's worried voice broke through. Tina, the situation doesn't look good. What if Paul can't beat that old fox of an uncle? I propped my head on my hand, idly playing with the mahjong tile in my fingers. Without a second of hesitation, I said, Paul won't lose. This time, it wasn't to coax a drunk Paul home. It wasn't to score points in our competition. I knew with absolute clarity that the scales in my heart had, at some point, decisively tipped to one side. Because he was Paul. And I knew he would win. In stark contrast to the struggling Paul was the effortlessly composed Julian. He even had the time to ask me out to dinner. At a high-rise restaurant overlooking the city center, which he had booked out entirely, he gallantly pulled out a chair for me. Tina, this was a last-minute booking. I hope you're okay with Italian. Perhaps I should have asked what kind of food you young people usually eat. The lights of the bustling city below reflected on Julian's smiling face. He was distant, refined, and aristocratic. Aside from a complete lack of warmth, he was utterly flawless. But looking at his face now, my heart was completely still. In fact, seeing Julian so relaxed while poor Paul was so busy he couldn't eat or sleep properly, I felt an irrational dislike for Julian welling up inside me. It's fine, I eat a bit of everything. I knew this anger was misplaced. So I suppressed the strange feeling and tried my best to be polite to my innocent uncle. We were all omnivores. Especially Paul. He was like a bottomless pit, he'd eat absolutely anything. I called him my personal garbage disposal. Any food I didn't like, any scraps, he would immediately take care of them for me. Chris had once dubbed him Schrodinger's germaphobe. Sigh. My mind was filled with Paul. I actually kind of missed him. Damn it. It was just a competition, just pretending to be a couple. How did I actually catch feelings? Tina, you don't seem very focused. Noticing my distraction, Julian lowered his gaze to cut his steak and suddenly teased. Let me guess. Are you thinking about Paul? Being an open book was the fate of a simple girl like me. I didn't try to hide it. Uncle, you know Paul and I are dating. It's only natural that seeing you would make me think of him. Isn't it fake? It was. But the plan had changed. I smiled candidly. Uncle, I've suddenly realized that I wouldn't mind if this fake relationship became real. As soon as I said it, a crack appeared on Julian's placid face. His fork scraped loudly against the smooth ceramic plate. He spoke gently, reminding me. Tina, if you're a smart person, you should know that choosing Paul at this point in time is not a cost-effective decision. He tried to persuade me. You've probably heard about the family situation. I can give you a little inside information. If I take over, Paul's family won't have it easy. At the very least, they won't be able to maintain their current standard of living. I know you used to like me. If you're willing. This was getting more and more ridiculous. I quickly cut him off before he could make things even more awkward. Uncle, I've never been the sharpest tool in the shed. The smile froze on Julian's face. I didn't look at him. Instead, I stared at the bracelet on my wrist and let out a soft laugh. So, I guess I can't make the smart choice. Slow as I am, I finally got it today. Who would let their mother give away such an important bracelet for a simple bet? From the 101st floor of the restaurant, the world felt cold and lonely. Weighing pros and cons, making calculated moves. That's not what I wanted. I finally saw my own heart clearly. At this point, I couldn't eat anymore. I took a deep breath. I stood up, maintaining the humble and obedient demeanor of a junior. Uncle, thank you for the offer, but let's just pretend this dinner never happened. At that moment, my mind was crystal clear. Turns out, a romance-addled brain can be a terrifying thing. It had just made me reject my childhood crush. Turns out, I was really in love with Paul. The butterflies in my stomach had finally crash-landed. I might not be smart, but my uncle certainly wasn't stupid. After what I said, he understood my meaning. Once it sank in, his brow relaxed, and he leaned back in his chair and slowly started to laugh. I respect your decision, Tina. But I think I should still fight for myself a little. What I mean is, if you change your mind later, you can still come back to me. My offer is good for life. Despite being rejected, Julian maintained his gentlemanly demeanor and arranged for a driver to wait for me at the entrance. Miss, where would you like to go? After such a chaotic evening, all I wanted was to go home and talk to Sarah about this twisted love I had for Paul. Just then, my phone buzzed with a new message. A voice note from Chris. Tina. Quick. Leo's burning up with a fever. I finally dragged him home, but you need to get here fast. I'm not sure I can survive a punch from his 16-inch biceps. You can't take it, but I can. Muttering under my breath but moving my feet, I grabbed a big bag of medicine and rushed to Paul's apartment. My feelings were a mess as I snapped at Chris. But my eyes kept darting uncontrollably toward Paul's room. Chris took the bag of medicine from me with a grin. Come on. Our resident king of romance worships the ground you walk on. He'd sooner chew off his own arm than swing at you. I walked toward Paul's room and scoffed, you could try to be a little less cheesy. You're a biased judge. Remember to tell Sarah I came so she can give me points. I entered the room. The door to Paul's room was slightly ajar. The room was pitch black, with the curtains drawn. Chris, you bastard. Kicking a man when he's down. Give me back my laptop and phone. Just wait till I'm better, I'll show you what's what. Paul, how did you get so sick? My voice and Paul's rang out at the same time in the quiet room. He froze, and when he realized who it was, he screeched in a hoarse, cracking voice. Holy crap. What are you doing here? Then, with lightning speed, he pulled the covers over his head. Tina, have you no shame? You're a girl. Barging into a young man's room like that? What are you doing here anyway? Weren't you having dinner with your beloved uncle? Wouldn't my death be a blessing for you? Oh, listen to him. So sour. I walked to his bed, pulled back the covers, and stuck a cooling patch on his forehead. I laughed menacingly. Chris called me, so I came. Scoring points here is way more important than having dinner with my uncle. Points, that's all you ever think about, that stupid competition. Tina, I'm done with this competition. You go find your uncle. I admit, I can't beat him, and I can't beat you. I'm preparing to cut ties with you for good. Paul had given up, letting me do as I pleased. But the words he spoke had all the threat of a pouting housewife. Sigh. After being enemies for so many years, it was still hard to accept that I had fallen for this version of Paul. But, if I like him, I like him. Since you're sick, I'll spoil you just this once. Cut ties? In your dreams, I said. If I cut ties with you, who's going to eat the fried chicken skin, burger buns, and pizza crusts? What, so you really just see me as your personal garbage disposal? A simp? A tool? You just can't bear to let your precious Julian eat that stuff, can you? Paul. There is no Julian. Having just confirmed my feelings, I had a lot of patience for a delirious Paul. I leaned down and took his burning hand in mine. Only then did I notice that the cheap bracelet I gave him was still on his wrist. A Rolex paired with a $5 friendship bracelet. Paul, the self-proclaimed fashion icon, was actually letting himself walk around with such a clashing combination. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If you're sick, take your medicine and get better. I know you still have a lot to do. The Paul the first no isn't someone who gives up easily. Paul, I'm waiting for you to get back on your feet. His breathing hitched. In the darkness, I wasn't sure if he was looking at me. After a long moment, he said seriously, "Okay. Then wait for me." On a snowy winter night, the storm finally passed. The undercurrents of conflict within the family finally settled, and the curtain fell. No one had expected it. Julian, who had returned with a vengeance and a ton of cash, had actually lost to his own nephew, nearly a decade his junior, and ended up in jail. Looking back, Paul himself was filled with emotion. He who loses the way will find little support. Julian was too hasty, bringing those dirty Wall Street tactics back here. But I guess I cheated a bit, too. If I had really gone head-to-head with him, I might not have won. Julian had targeted Paul's father, seeing him as mediocre. But he had overlooked the power of Paul's mother's family in the business world. They had uncovered evidence of Julian's bribery. Although the old man, their grandfather, tried his best to intervene, some legal lines can't be crossed. The old man was tired and weary. In the end, there was nothing he could do. This was the beginning of Paul's era. Outside the window, snow fell from the sky. Inside, the atmosphere was lively and warm. As I drew a tile, I complained, "Paul, can you please switch your cologne? You're starting to reek of bitter orange." It was seriously making me dizzy. Paul lifted his jacket and sniffed. "Isn't this the one you gave me? I thought you loved this scent." I couldn't really stand it at first either, but since you liked it, I forced myself to get used to it. "Heh, I'm so reluctant to use the bottle you gave me that I bought 10 identical ones to use instead." I gave it to him, yes, but when I tossed that thing into the gift box, I didn't know you were going to buy 10 more bottles of it. Dude. But in the end, I had to swallow my bitterness. I couldn't very well admit I had pawned off a scent I blind bought and hated. That would cost me points. So I resigned myself to my fate and quietly changed the subject. "Of course I like what I gave you. By the way, I win." I pushed over my mahjong tiles, my mood instantly lifting. "You won again. What are we, a bunch of losers?" Sarah glanced at my tiles and Paul's and sneered. "How are we supposed to play when Paul is feeding you winning tiles every round? Can you two damn lovebirds please get your own table to play at? Don't our lives matter? My money is worth something, too." The accused, Paul, readily admitted to his crime. He raised his hands with a shameless grin. "You caught me just trying to make her happy. Fine. Fine. All losses are on me, and any wins count as double for you." I saw it all, and my heart warmed. Such a classic alpha male move. It was a blessing in disguise. After this whole ordeal, Paul had matured considerably. Under the bright lights, his handsome, sharp features were clearly defined. He had a mature air, yet with just the right touch of youthful spirit. It was a combination that only Paul could balance so perfectly. He was so damn handsome. I was pretty sure I had fallen in love with this man. But before the deer in my heart could even start to prance, the 3-second rule of handsomeness kicked in. He poked Chris with a smug grin. "I'm a pretty good boyfriend, right? Boyfriend power level over 9,000? Write that down, give me all the points. The year is almost up. How are the scores looking? You've counted every single point, right?" After getting an affirmative reply, Paul looked back at me, satisfied. He clapped me on the shoulder like a bro. "How about that? I'm killing it this season. You better step up your game, Tina." Clearly, Paul's itch to act like a big shot was back. The deer in my heart, I was about to go wild, but just kidding, I'll just die now. I forced a smile and reached over. One by one, I pried his fingers off my shoulder. "Get lost. Even if you cure an idiot like Paul, he'll just end up drooling." I was the one being extra. Apricot blossoms, dewy with the spring morning, bloomed on the branches. In the blink of an eye, the year was up. Around the mahjong table, it was the same familiar group of friends. Today is the final judgment for Paul and Tina's year-long dating expert competition. Are you ready? Paul, dressed in a sharp, well-tailored suit, couldn't hide the vibrant excitement in his eyes. Ready. Chris and Sarah were about to announce the final scores. Suddenly, Paul grabbed the megaphone that was prepared for the loser to shout "Daddy." "Wait, I have something to say." I waited expectantly, wondering what nonsense he was about to spout. He took a deep breath, as if he had made a monumental decision, and said, word for word, "I want to tell Tina something. I'm addicted to this competition. I can't get enough. Tina, how about we go into overtime? More competition?" My breath caught in my throat. I looked into Paul's eyes and cautiously tested the waters. "What? Did you fall in love with me?" "Yes." Paul nodded, then shook his head. He scratched his head, embarrassed, and corrected himself. "It wasn't during the competition that I fell for you. It was a long, long time ago." "Damn. You're pretty good at hiding things. But what's the deal with confessing right now? Are you that eager to call me daddy?" So, I decided to grant his wish. I shot up from my seat, ecstatic. "LMAO. You fell in love. You lose. Call me daddy." A moment of stunned silence fell over the group. The hand holding the megaphone dropped limply to Paul's side. He gave a bitter smile. His eyes, which had been sparkling with joy just a moment ago, were now welling up with tears. "Daddy. Daddy. Daddy. Are you happy now, you heartless woman? Always so obsessed with that competition, you monster." He plopped down onto the chair and started wiping his eyes. Oh. I took it too far. I made Paul cry. Sure, a man's tears are usually my brand of caffeine, but today was not the day. Looking at the tears about to fall from Paul's eyes, I bit my lip in guilt. Forgetting that we had an audience, I rushed forward, cupped his face in my hands, and clumsily kissed the tears away. Amidst the whooping and hollering from Sarah and Chris, Paul froze on the spot, completely stunned. "Tina, what are you doing?" My face flushed red. I leaned in close to his ear and said, very seriously, "Paul, let's keep betting then. A year or so is nothing. How about we bet on a lifetime? If love is a gamble, then everyone who enters is a gambler. And for that one tear from Paul? I'm going all in." Epilogue. When Paul proposed the bet to Sarah and Chris, they were completely shocked. Sarah's jaw dropped. To tailor-make such an elaborate scheme for a clueless girl like Tina, Paul, you really fried your CPU trying to win her over. Chris was in awe. "Paul, you truly are a god of love." Paul let out a long, helpless sigh. What choice did I have? Julian is about to come back to the country. Sometimes he felt the exhaustion of a father who, after raising 6 sons, finds out he has to raise 18 grandchildren. He had been in love with Tina his whole life. But that dense, oblivious girl was only interested in being his nemesis. Childhood friends, wasn't that supposed to be a romantic script? He didn't understand where it all went wrong. Until Tina told him with a blushing face, "Paul, your uncle is so handsome. I like him so much." Only then did he realize Tina wasn't heartless. Her heart just belonged to his uncle, Julian. If Julian wasn't coming back, he wouldn't have resorted to such a desperate plan to trap Tina and, at the same time, warn Julian to back off. He could only hope everything would go smoothly. It takes one to know one. Paul had known for a long time that Julian's intentions toward Tina weren't pure. Paul truly wanted Tina to be happy. If Julian genuinely loved her, he would have accepted it. But by a strange twist of fate, Paul had once seen the small, black and white ID photo tucked away in a hidden compartment of Julian's wallet. It was his first love, who had passed away long ago. She looked 80% like Tina. He had heard that before Julian returned to the family, this girl had always been by his side. She was with him when he had nothing, and she died on the day he reached his peak. Anyone would be devastated, unable to let go. But he should never, ever have treated Tina as a substitute for another woman. To Paul, Tina was the little prince's one and only rose. Paul silently apologized to Tina in his heart. "I'm sorry. Please forgive me for taking matters into my own hands." After Tina and Paul got together, their dynamic remained pretty much the same. One night, Paul came home late. He found Tina curled up on the sofa, waiting for him. A pang of pain shot through Paul's heart. "Honey, why aren't you sleeping in bed? What are you waiting for me for?" Sensing his familiar presence, Tina subconsciously snuggled into his arms and started singing, "How can I fall asleep without seeing your smile?" Paul suspected Tina spent her days at home memorizing memes. She was always ready to drop a clever line at any opportunity. To avoid being seen as lame by her, no matter how late he worked, Paul had to maintain a high level of internet surfing. He was used to it by now. He played along, putting on a stern face. "What if I never smile? You'll just never sleep?" Tina thought for a moment, then hooked her arm around his neck and giggled. "You forgot you lost the bet to me? How can you not smile at your daddy? You'd be so undad-leavable." The undad-leavable Paul couldn't help but laugh. He swept her up into his arms and carried her to the bedroom, ignoring her flailing limbs. He turned off the light and said slowly, "Bad puns must be punished. And there are even more unfilial things we could try tonight." Julian remained a thorn in Paul's side. After all, Tina had liked Julian for so many years. Could she really forget him just like that? He himself had loved Tina for just as many years. He had to admit, a feeling like that wasn't something you could just switch off. But he only dared to think about this question, then avoid it. 1. He was afraid it would be awkward. 2. He was afraid that if Tina thought about her first love, Julian, she might get ideas. It wasn't until they got their marriage certificate and he had an official title that he finally felt secure enough. One day, he gathered his courage and asked in a deliberately casual tone, "Honey, what was it you liked about Julian back then?" At that moment, they were snuggled on the couch watching a movie. Tina was wearing gloves, meticulously peeling the skin off a piece of fried chicken. She then accurately stuffed the crispy skin into Paul's mouth. "Don't you think he looked just like a young George Clooney?" Having a mouthful of grease unexpectedly shoved at him, Paul resignedly chewed and nodded. "And? That's it?" Tina looked at him strangely. "Looking like a young George Clooney is enough. What other reason do you need?" After a moment of silence, Paul stared at her eyes, which didn't seem to be lying, and laughed at the absurdity. "So when you were a kid, you said you liked Julian just because he looked like a handsome actor?" "Yup." Tina popped the smooth chicken meat into her mouth, completely satisfied. "What else? Was I supposed to be into him for his age? Or his questionable hygiene?" Knowing she had made the topic awkward, she took off her gloves and started being playful. "Honey, I peeled the chicken skin for you. You can't just sit there. Help me peel this orange." Paul pinched Tina's cheek and said helplessly, "You greedy woman. You take and take. What? You don't want to? We just got married and you're already losing patience with me? Fine. Fine. You men are all the same. No gambler wins forever. I guess I was tricked into this marriage after all. Where was all this coming from?" Sometimes, Paul was genuinely curious about Tina's train of thought. But he just laughed, his heart growing softer and softer. Mimicking her, Paul leaned in and placed a gentle, emotional kiss on her face. "That's right. You'll just have to put up with it. I plan on tricking you for a lifetime. A lifetime of being utterly devoted to Tina."